Picture this. It's a Tuesday morning somewhere in Africa, Kenya maybe, or Uganda. A white Toyota Land Cruiser is grinding through red dust roads, carrying medical supplies to a village with no paved access. The car has 380,000 kilometers on it. The engine doesn't complain. The doors still close with a satisfying thud. The driver has never replaced the transmission. That Land Cruiser was built in the 1990s. Now picture a highway in rural America. A 1997 Toyota Camry rolls past. Faded paint, a few dents, but the engine humming clean. The odometer reads 320,000 miles. The owner bought it used for $3,000 7 years ago and has done nothing but oil changes and tire rotations. These aren't myths. These aren't advertisements. These are things that happen so frequently, so consistently, all around the world, that they've become the standard expectation for Japanese cars. Not a pleasant surprise. The expectation. So the question we need to answer today is this: why? What is it about Japanese cars that makes them so hard to kill? What makes them dominate reliability rankings year after year, hold their value better than almost any competitor on Earth, and earn the blind trust of buyers on 6 continents? The answer isn't one thing. It's a combination of philosophy, history, culture, engineering discipline, and a manufacturing revolution that literally changed how the entire world builds things. Let's break it all down. Chapter 1. The world they were born into. To understand why Japanese cars are built the way they are, you have to understand where they came from. The year is 1945. Japan has just lost World War II. The country is devastated. Cities are rubble. Infrastructure is gone. Factories are destroyed. The economy has essentially collapsed. And in the middle of this wreckage, a small company called Toyota Motor Corporation is trying to figure out how to survive. Here's the problem Toyota faced. American manufacturers like Ford and General Motors had massive, well-funded production lines. They had warehouses full of spare parts, enormous capital reserves, and decades of experience. Toyota had almost none of that. There was a productivity gap of roughly 10-to-1 between Japanese and American manufacturers at the time. For every car Toyota could make, Ford could make 10. So what do you do when you can't compete on scale? You compete on something else. You compete on precision, on eliminating waste, on making sure that every single part you produce is perfect, because you can't afford to throw away defective pieces. You can't afford to carry excess inventory. You can't afford for the production line to keep rolling when something goes wrong. This desperation, this absolute necessity of doing more with less, became the seed of something extraordinary. 2 engineers named Taiichi Ono and Eiji Toyoda developed a revolutionary manufacturing system between 1948 and 1975. It was originally called just-in-time production. Wikipedia. And it would eventually become known as the Toyota Production System, arguably the most influential manufacturing philosophy in history. The inspiration for just-in-time manufacturing came from an unlikely place: American supermarkets. When Kiichiro Toyota studied how supermarkets scheduled deliveries based on when their existing inventory was selling, he saw the template for what he wanted in his factory. Ichii Challenge. The supermarket didn't stock 10 years of cereal in the back. It restocked the shelf as items were purchased. Toyota would do the same thing with car parts. The core philosophy was simple: make only what is needed, only when it is needed, and only in the amount that is needed. Wikipedia. This sounds obvious, but it was revolutionary, because it meant that every single component that entered the production line had to be flawless. There were no extra parts sitting in a warehouse to replace bad ones. There was no buffer. Quality had to be built in at the source. Because of this, employees were encouraged and expected to halt the production process the moment they spotted a defect. In American and European factories, mass production lines would continue rolling, and the defect would be found later. In Toyota's system, the line stopped immediately. Garage dreams. That one change, that single cultural shift of stopping the line rather than letting problems pass, echoes through every Toyota, Honda, Mazda, and Subaru built today. It's why problems get fixed at the root instead of patched at the end. By 1980, Toyota and other Japanese automakers had become so competitive using this system that they had captured a 22.2% market share in U.S. passenger car sales. Japan was importing cars into the U.S. at lower cost and higher quality than domestic brands. Science direct. The Americans were stunned. They sent researchers to Japan to figure out what was happening. And what they found was so different, so fundamentally more effective than anything they had ever seen, that MIT published an entire book about it in 1990 called The Machine That Changed the World. That book coined the term lean manufacturing, and lean manufacturing today is the backbone of modern industry worldwide, from car factories to hospitals to Amazon warehouses. It all started because Japan couldn't afford to waste anything. Chapter 2. Kaizen, the philosophy of never being finished. Now let's talk about the word that sits at the heart of everything Japanese manufacturing does. Kaizen. In Japanese, it means continuous improvement. 2 characters. Kai, change. Zen, good. Change for good. But it means far more than that in practice. Japanese manufacturers obsess over perfecting what already works. Unlike Western automakers, who might redesign entire systems every few years, Japanese companies ask, how can we make this run flawlessly for 20 years? Wealthy driver. That is the Kaizen mindset in one sentence. Not how do we build something new, but how do we make what we already have better? Not revolution, evolution. Constant, relentless, patient evolution. At Toyota, if one worker sees a problem, they stop the line. They find out what went wrong and fix it right away. That same problem does not happen again. Over time, these small changes create better engines, better brakes, better fuel systems. The enterprise world. This is not a corporate slogan. This is a daily, hourly practice embedded in the DNA of the factory floor. The person assembling the door panel has the power and the responsibility to stop the entire production line if something looks wrong. Not call a manager, not fill out a form. Stop the line. Toyota literally invented the famous 5 whys technique, where engineers ask why 5 times to get to the root cause of any problem. Found a defective part? Why did it fail? Because the metal is fatigued. Why? Because the heat treatment was inconsistent. And so on. This relentless problem-solving culture means issues get fixed before they become endemic nightmares across entire production lines. Wealthy driver. Think about what that means over decades. If Toyota has been applying the 5 whys to every defect since the 1950s, and if every lesson learned gets built into the next generation of parts, the next set of assembly procedures, the next engine design, the compounding effect of that is enormous. You're not looking at a car that was engineered once. You're looking at a car that has been refined by thousands of problems that were identified, dissected, and permanently eliminated over 70 years. That's not marketing. That's accumulated institutional wisdom baked into metal and rubber. Chapter 3. The engineering philosophy. Simple, strong, long. Here's where we get into the actual engineering decisions that make Japanese cars physically different from competitors. And this is fascinating. Japanese manufacturers typically use simpler, proven technologies with generous tolerances. Honda's naturally aspirated engines, for instance, operate well below their stress limits, meaning components wear slowly. They're not chasing the absolute maximum horsepower per liter. They're building motors that your grandkids could inherit. Wealthy driver. This is a deliberate strategic choice that runs counter to what European and American manufacturers often do. European engineers, particularly German ones, tend to push for maximum performance, maximum technology, maximum features, the absolute bleeding edge of what's possible. That produces spectacular cars when everything works, but it also produces complexity. and complexity breaks. A German sports car might push boundaries with amazing tech, but the Japanese car will likely still be on the road 15 years later, after the German is long dead in a ditch after something expensive went wrong. Piston heads. The metaphor that keeps coming up from automotive engineers is this. Japanese manufacturers will use 10 parts to achieve 90% of the result. European manufacturers will use 100 parts to achieve 99% of the result. And in the short run, 99% sounds better. But when the 100-part system starts failing, and complex systems always start failing eventually, it fails expensively and in multiple ways simultaneously. Japanese cars focus on real-world use. They are not made to impress with flashy features or overly complex systems. They are made to serve the driver. Every decision during design starts with a simple question. Will this help the car run better? If the answer is no, it is left out. The enterprise world. This philosophy shows up in specific, concrete engineering decisions. Timing chains instead of timing belts, because chains last the life of the engine while belts need periodic replacement. Oil filters placed in accessible positions, so routine maintenance is easy. Electrical systems designed to be straightforward rather than labyrinthine. Engines tuned for longevity rather than peak output. Japanese automakers often stick with the same reliable suppliers for decades, building relationships that ensure consistent quality. Every component must be perfect because there's no warehouse full of backups. This system forces quality control at every single step. Wealthy driver. Think about that supplier relationship. If Toyota has been working with the same company for the bearings in their engines for 30 years, that supplier knows exactly what Toyota needs. The tolerances are understood down to the micron. The quality is consistent because the relationship is consistent. Meanwhile, a manufacturer that shops around for the cheapest parts every few years is constantly introducing unknowns into its production chain. Lexus takes this further with what they call Takumi masters, craftspeople who have spent at least 60,000 hours dedicated to their specific art, whether that's carpentry, upholstery, or engineering. The title literally translates as artisan or skilled. Top speed. 60,000 hours. That's the equivalent of working 8 hours a day, every day, for over 20 years. That level of dedicated mastery is built into the assembly process. Chapter 4. The numbers don't lie. Reliability rankings. Let's get concrete with data, because the philosophical stuff only means so much. The real test is what happens in the real world, with real owners, over real years of use. In the 2025 Consumer Reports Reliability Rankings, the top 6 brands with the best reliability were all Japanese: Subaru, Lexus, Toyota, Honda, Acura, and Mazda, in that order. Jalopnik, all 6, not 5 out of 6, not 4. All 6 top spots belong to Japanese manufacturers. The results were particularly impressive for Subaru. The Subaru Forester achieved perfect grades in every single category, from in-car electronics to engine and transmission, to simple noises and leaks. When Consumer Reports tried to identify potential trouble spots, owners couldn't find any. Jalopnik. Not a single reported problem area, a perfect score for an entire vehicle lineup. Japanese brands were also responsible for 8 of the top 10 compact cars ranked by Consumer Reports' predicted reliability score. The Subaru Impreza led, followed by the Toyota Corolla and Corolla hatchback tied for second, and then 7 more Japanese models including the Toyota Prius, Mazda 3, Nissan Sentra, and Honda Civic. Jalopnik, J.D. Power, which is the other gold standard in automotive reliability research, tells the same story. In J.D. Power's Vehicle Dependability Study, Lexus ranked number 1, with Mazda and Toyota in 3rd and 4th place. Jalopnik. Now, this isn't to say Japanese manufacturers are perfect or that competitors haven't improved. They have. But the consistency of Japanese brands appearing at the top of these lists, year after year, decade after decade, is not coincidence. It is the compounding result of everything we've discussed: the philosophy, the engineering discipline, and the manufacturing systems. Chapter 5. The Shaken System and the Culture of Maintenance. Here's something that most people outside Japan don't know about, but it plays a significant role in why Japanese cars are so consistently well-maintained. Japan has a mandatory vehicle inspection system called Shaken. Every car on Japanese roads must pass this rigorous inspection, and the standards are not soft. A car that doesn't meet the requirements doesn't drive. Japan's Shaken inspection system enforces regular vehicle checks to ensure all cars on the road are well-maintained. This inspection system promotes a culture of regular maintenance and repair, which keeps cars in excellent condition for a long time. Japanese cars are often in near-perfect shape even when sold as used vehicles, making them a great choice for international buyers seeking high-quality, dependable cars. Every car review. This has a remarkable downstream effect. When Japan exports used cars to the rest of the world, and Japan is one of the largest exporters of used vehicles on the planet, those cars arrive in Africa, the Caribbean, Southeast Asia, and the Middle East, having been rigorously maintained throughout their life in Japan. The buying country gets a vehicle that has been inspected, serviced, and kept to a strict standard. That reputation for used car quality is itself part of why Japanese brands dominate in markets that can't afford to buy new. The Shaken system is also why the culture inside Japan treats car maintenance not as an inconvenience, but as a social obligation. You don't let your car slide because your car failing inspection reflects on you. The result is a population of drivers who genuinely maintain their vehicles, which in turn validates the reliability reputation of the cars themselves. Chapter 6. Fuel Efficiency and the 1973 Oil Crisis. No discussion of Japanese automotive dominance is complete without talking about oil, because an energy crisis half a century ago didn't just affect gas prices, it fundamentally reshuffled who ruled the global car market. In 1973, OPEC declared an oil embargo. Fuel prices spiked. Suddenly, the massive gas-guzzling American cars that had defined the market for decades were an expensive liability. American consumers went looking for something smaller, something that could travel further on a tank of gas. Japan was ready. While American manufacturers had been building large displacement, low-efficiency engines optimized for performance and comfort, Japanese manufacturers had been building practical, fuel-efficient cars suited to Japan's crowded cities and expensive domestic fuel. The oil crisis of 1973 essentially handed Japanese automakers the American market on a platter. Japanese cars consistently rank higher than American, European, and Korean cars in terms of miles per gallon. The Toyota Prius hybrid, for example, achieves around 58 mpg compared to the Ford Fusion hybrid at 43 mpg. As fuel prices continue to rise globally, buyers increasingly turn to cars that consume less fuel. Say Japan. And the fuel efficiency story didn't stop with the oil crisis. The Toyota Prius was the first hybrid vehicle ever mass-produced. Say Japan. Toyota didn't just respond to the demand for fuel efficiency. They pioneered the technology that would define the next generation of the automobile. The hybrid powertrain that is now standard across dozens of brands worldwide was invented and perfected by a Japanese company. Fuel-efficient designs not only save fuel costs but also reduce the stress on the engine, leading to longer lifespans. Every car review. That's a point worth sitting with. An engine that runs efficiently isn't just cheaper to operate. It's actually physically easier on its components. Lower operating temperatures, less stress on pistons and valves, less heat cycling wear on seals and gaskets. Fuel efficiency and longevity reinforce each other. A car built to sip fuel is also in many ways a car built to last. Chapter 7. The Resale Value Story. Your Money Back. Here's the real-world test of everything we've discussed. If Japanese cars truly are more reliable and longer-lasting, that should show up in their resale value. And it absolutely does. According to CarEdge data, Toyota leads all brands in 5-year resale value, retaining 64.9% of its original price. The next best brand is Subaru at 61.2%, followed by Honda at 60.5%. Car Buzz 3 of the top 3. And the gap between Japanese brands and most European luxury brands is significant. Toyota has topped Kelley Blue Book's best resale value list 8 times since 2014, including 4 consecutive years. Lexus has won the luxury car category 5 times. CNBC. The Toyota Corolla retains 73.7% of its original value after 5 years. The Toyota Land Cruiser retains 63.5%. The Honda Fit retains over 80% of its resale value. Car from Japan. 80% for a compact hatchback. That means if you buy a Honda Fit and drive it for 5 years, you still have most of your money sitting in your driveway. Compare this to a European luxury sedan. A BMW 5 Series or a Mercedes E-Class might retail for $60,000 new. 5 years later, that same car often sells for $25,000 or less, a loss of over 58% of its value. Not because European cars are badly made, but because buyers know from experience that maintaining them gets expensive, that electronics fail in specific and costly ways, and that the repair bills compound over time. The Honda Accord depreciates only 26% over 3 years. The Subaru Forester depreciates 28%. The Lexus RX 350 depreciates just 29%. Yahoo! For ordinary families making real financial decisions, this matters enormously. A car is one of the most significant purchases most people make. Choosing a vehicle that holds its value means you're not just buying transportation. You're making an investment that partially preserves itself. Chapter 8. Global Domination. The numbers in context. Let's zoom out and look at just how dominant Japanese manufacturers are on the global stage, because the numbers are genuinely staggering. Toyota is the largest automobile manufacturer in the world by sales volume. Not just Japanese manufacturers, all manufacturers. Toyota surpassed General Motors, surpassed Volkswagen, and has held that position for several years running. The company that rebuilt itself from rubble after World War II is now the single biggest car company on the planet. The Toyota RAV4 is not just a popular car. It is frequently the best-selling vehicle in the United States. In 2024, the Toyota RAV4 led all Japanese vehicles in U.S. sales, with 295 units sold. Top speed. The Honda CR-V, the Toyota Camry, the Honda Civic, the Toyota Corolla, these aren't just models. They are category-defining benchmarks. When another manufacturer wants to assess how good their compact sedan is, they compare it to the Corolla. When they want to evaluate their mid-size SUV, they compare it to the RAV4 or the CR-V. Many car owners report driving their Japanese vehicles for over 15 years without major issues. Next drive. And that longevity shows up in global demand for used Japanese vehicles in ways that no other country's car industry can match. Countries across Africa, South Asia, and Southeast Asia specifically seek out Japanese used cars from auction houses in Japan, knowing that even a 10-year-old vehicle exported from Japan will likely have been maintained rigorously under the Shaken system. This creates an extraordinary market. Japanese cars have a global used car demand that European and American cars simply cannot match. Chapter 9. The Innovation Balance. Steady progress, not spectacle. There's a criticism sometimes leveled at Japanese cars that is worth addressing directly. Critics say, Japanese cars are boring, they don't take risks, they're reliable but uninspiring. And to some extent that's true, by design. Japanese car makers tend to innovate and refine on one piece of technology for a longer time frame, as opposed to jumping from one piece of tech to another. Subaru, for example, has been refining their AWD system for decades and using it in almost all of their cars. Garage dreams. That's not timidity. That's strategy. When you refine something for decades, you understand it at a level that competitors who just adopted it cannot match. Subaru's all-wheel drive isn't just a feature. It's an ecosystem of knowledge, supplier relationships, engineering refinements, and real-world performance data accumulated over generations of vehicles. Honda's naturally aspirated VTEC engines, Toyota's hybrid Synergy drive, Mazda's SkyActiv engine technology. These aren't last-minute features added to hit a spec sheet. They are the result of sustained, patient, decades-long engineering commitment. The car's journey doesn't end after the sale. Japanese companies stay with the driver for the long term. They offer clear service plans, timely support, and trained mechanics in every city where they operate. The enterprise world. The global parts ecosystem around Japanese cars is itself a competitive advantage. Because Honda Civics and Toyota Corollas are everywhere, mechanics everywhere know how to work on them. Parts are abundant and affordable. You can find a mechanic in Lagos, in Lahore, in Lima, who knows exactly what to do with a broken Toyota. That universality, that ubiquity, makes these cars practical in a way that more exotic or complex vehicles simply aren't. Chapter 10. The legacy and what it means, so let's bring it all together. Japanese cars aren't unbeatable because of magic. They aren't unbeatable because of superior raw materials or some mysterious cultural ingredient that can't be studied or replicated. They are unbeatable, or at least extraordinarily difficult to beat, because of a set of decisions, philosophies, and systems that were forged in crisis, refined over decades, and applied with extraordinary consistency. They started with nothing after the war and were forced to eliminate waste at every single step of production. That necessity gave birth to the Toyota production system, which gave the world lean manufacturing. They adopted Kaizen, the philosophy that you are never finished improving, and made it not a slogan but a daily practice on every factory floor. They made engineering decisions that prioritized longevity over peak performance, simplicity over complexity, and service life over showroom glory. They built a culture of maintenance through systems like Shaken that ensured their cars stayed in excellent condition throughout their usable life. They recognized the global shift toward fuel efficiency before anyone else and invested early in hybrid technology, earning them a generation of goodwill and market share. And then they let the results speak for themselves. In the 2025 Consumer Reports rankings, the top 6 most reliable car brands were all Japanese. 8 of the top 10 most reliable compact cars were Japanese, and Lexus was ranked number 1 in J.D. Power's Vehicle Dependability Study. Jalopnik, a 1990s Toyota Camry with 300,000 miles. A Land Cruiser still hauling supplies through African dirt roads after 3 decades. A Honda Fit that retains 80% of its value after 5 years. A factory floor where any worker can stop the entire production line the moment something looks wrong. These aren't accidents. They're the output of a philosophy that decided 70 years ago that the only way to build a car worth building is to build one that refuses to break. That's why Japanese cars are unbeatable. Not because they're flashiest, not because they're fastest, but because when you need something that will be there tomorrow, next year, a decade from now, they simply show up